Well, I would tell you, but it's so much of the fun of the first episode, because that's the whole point of the first episode. You don't see any of the other characters. It's Hannibal and Bedelia, and it's the talented Mr. Lecter, and how they live, with under aliases, and how they're navigating getting away from the FBI. And it takes place a year after the season finale, so they've been at this for an entire year when we land in their story. And I think it's going to answer a lot of questions, because we do flashbacks. We understand what happened with her patient. We flash back to that. We flash back to the night of the murders and what her perspective was. So there's. I would tell you, but it would take too much away from the episode. But we're going to answer all those questions, and I can't wait. It's been surprisingly easy with NBC. One of the things, when we first sat down, I was doing Mockingbird Lane for NBC, and we talked about Hannibal, and Jen Salke, who's the president of NBC Entertainment, said, "Don't take it anywhere else, I want it, and I promise you I will let you do the show that you want to do, just let us have it." And so we sold it to NBC, and she kept her promise. I mean, we don't get great ratings, and the show has a very loyal fan base that has kept us buoyant, but also what's kept us buoyant is Jen Salke keeping her promise. And it's so rare, I can't articulate how rare it is to have a network executive say, "We're going to support your show." We get minimal notes. We have harder violence and gore than I think most R-rated movies, and they are always working with us to help us navigate this. Like when Michael Pitt was cutting off his face and feeding it to the dogs, we called Standards and Practices and said that there's a scene in the book that we'd really like to do. Help us do it. And she was like, "Okay, so if you keep this in the shadows, if you have the red of the blood look almost brown or black, it won't trip off the alarm bells." So they have been incredibly supportive and helpful with getting us to navigate the rules and regulations for this show. So it's unheard of. Like, I'm still pinching myself, going like, are you sure we don't have? Because I'll send in cuts that I cringe and go, okay, they're going to bump us on that, and they're going to tell us to take it away, and they don't. Like the guy who was ripping himself out of the human mural, I was like, they'll never. I sent it off to them, and I was like, okay, we'll have to cut this back considerably. They had no notes, and they were just like, keep going. That's just, it's for the first episode. So the first episode is just Hannibal and Bedelia, and then we'll see Will in episode 2 and start his story then. So in a way it might be a cleaner introduction to the show, because you're not coming in with an FBI criminal procedural show. You're coming in with a criminal and his psychiatrist who have escaped the law and are living abroad and have adventures with their situation that are exciting and also intriguing, because their relationship is hard to quantify for the audience, because they're thinking like, what is she up to? Why is she on that plane? And that's the fun for us, was like, we have to make her smart. We can't have her brainwashed, and we can't have her, be duped by Hannibal into any way, shape, or form. She has to be a woman in charge of her own story and be driving her own story in the same way that Hannibal has to drive his own story. And that's been really exciting in the writer's room, because it puts up a lot of orange cones, because normally when you're breaking story, it's easy to have a character do something dumb to get the story to go forward. And in the writer's room, it's like, nope, we can't do that, she's too smart, she wouldn't do that. Nope, we can't do that, she's too smart, she wouldn't do that. Nope, we can't do that, she's too smart, she wouldn't do that. So it's a lot of that in the break room that's fun for us. And it's interesting to look at the female writers in the show when I say, no, she's too smart, and they're like, that's great to have an experience where you're on a show and somebody says, no, the character wouldn't do that because they're too smart. We have to think of a way that doesn't make them dumb to get the plot to move forward. we talked a lot about, because we are very into horror and like horror homages on the show, and really for Will Graham this season, the most accurate horror homage for us was Frankenstein. And here's a guy who's been gutted, arguably dead, and coming back from that death, being sewn back together, and looking for the man who created him to understand what his journey is. And so that's been, this is sort of like the tip of the iceberg, but it felt like for us an interesting journey that we had to make it a different Will Graham than season 1 Will Graham, a different Will Graham than season 2 Will Graham, and it makes the character more interesting for the actors to play. But they have to grow, they have to change. Everybody that survives that horror house finale of season 2 is a slightly different character because they can't help but be changed by what they've experienced.
Thank you.